Yo, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Pixelists, the podcast about all the nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Will, and this is my good friend Blake, and I'm so happy you're here, and I'm not talking to a stuffed animal.
And it feels so good. Hey, I will say, your boy Jeremy did a good job. So.
He pales in comparison to the real thing. But dude, it's so good to. It's been a minute since I've even really like had a chance to talk to you very much. You know,
I know, yeah,
you've been kind of busy, I guess.
Yeah, I have been. So for our listeners, I had a baby. It's our second baby, and I also have a job.
I had a baby. Let's just so nobody gets confused.
How dare you? Then I got a job. She's got a job. So it's been kind of wild managing everything, and just couldn't get together to record. So here we are, and naturally, it is a huge lore bomb of an episode, which I'm excited to dig in with you. But yeah, I still need to watch EXU. Have you watched it yet?
I've seen the first of the two parts, so I still need to watch part two.
Yeah, I need to watch. I've seen up to the break of the first one. So I need to finish the first one. But then those of you guys who've watched long term, I've mentioned that my wife, who never did any D&D, she watched EXU with me. And so when I told her I'd watched the first half, she was like, hold up. Like, we need to watch this whole thing. But we're in this phase right now with our newborn where it's really fun. Where like every hour he's awake. So like we started Moon Knight and we were like, 6 minutes into like the first episode, we were like, okay, yeah. And then the baby started crying, and that was our Friday night. So nothing happened after that. So, but it's all good.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So,
but I have you seen any Moon Knight, or just that?
No, because we want to watch it together because we've watched all our Marvel shows together, and just like right now our schedules just haven't synced up.
Yeah.
So
I've seen the first three, and I don't know if you and I will end up talking about it, but I'm not going to do it now. But I do have some thoughts, but we'll perhaps get to that at a later date. I think that's pretty much it, unless there's anything else we needed to say.
No. Yeah. I mean, I just apologize to you guys who watch our channel and follow the podcast just for how, obviously not being there previously, but just how delayed this episode has been. My illustrious co-host pretty much every day was like, hey, so are we good to go? And I was like, bro, I haven't. I'm sorry. So today I finally watched it. So the benefit is for me, I mean, it's Thursday. We got a new episode tonight.
That's right.
It's super fresh for me. So, cause I just watched it today, but, anyway, I am disappointed that so much great lore content was put in this episode and there's not a lot of time to talk about it. So that is a bit of a bummer, but yeah.
Well, the good news is it seems like we're going to get the heist tonight this week. And so I think that like most of all that lore stuff is still going to be hanging in the air. So like, I don't think we're really going to like get any answers on that this week. So we might still have time to percolate on it. But without further ado, I guess, let's go ahead and jump into this. And if you're new to us, we're the Pixelists. We do a recap of each episode, and that's how we start off this podcast. And following that, we will do our discussion and theory crafting and everything. So we're going to jump into that. And quick disclaimer, I mean, I'm hoping this isn't that long, but as Blake said, it was a big lore drop. So I know this first half that I'm recapping is a lot. So please bear with us. And maybe it'll end up being like a normal recap, but there's a lot here. So yeah, I guess let's jump into it.
A lot of good stuff, though.
Yeah,
a lot of real good stuff. But anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. All right, so episode 19 of Critical Role Campaign 3. The episode picks up in Istani's home, which is, where we left off last time. And he's offering the party some drinks. And turns out the drink of choice is lime juice. Like, not water with lime, but like lime juice. Anyway, he's making the drinks. And the party, while he's doing that, are basically reminding themselves why they're here. And it's to learn about what happened to the Loomis Twins. And to learn about how that may connect to Imogen's mother. Who, if you'll recall, was in a study that within a book, and the Loomis Twins were the last people to have checked out that book. So there might be some sort of tie there. So Istani comes back with the lime juice, and Orm asks about the Loomis Twins, and they basically fill us in on kind of what we already knew, that they were attacked by these three, masked, cloaked figures that just escaped, and Ashad Brezio managed to cut one down, but he just like dissipated, just like Orm had told everybody that happened when this similar attack happened to him. The Loomis twins were killed. Brescio was poisoned and gravely injured. Istani said he was left untouched. And again, of the three attackers that came, two escaped. Brescio killed one. They do insight check Istani here, and Orm does believe what he is saying. And they just start to learn a bit more about the man himself. And he's basically a scholar. He has personally studied the planes of existence around Exandria and has been fascinated and basically devoted his life to that study. And he has the theory that, the world holds its own unique planar ecosystem, and that there are more realms beyond just the one they're familiar with.
I love when someone was like, pretty sure that's not true.
And he, in this whole big lore drop, he name dropped a few interesting figures that we will probably talk about in the discussion portion of this, but notably Plane Rider Ren, and also Ebenhold Kai. He said he's worked with them in this work. And he goes on to say that his connection with the Loomis twins came because they read some of his research and found him through that, and then started contacting him through letters, and they became friends, and eventually would come to visit to study and talk and just learn more about all this phenomena. And over the last year or so, Istani says that the Loomis twins had been focused on research of the moon of ill omen, Ruidus, and especially its flares, which is like this light that would sometimes like spew out of it without warning, that had been recorded over the years, the different times this had happened. And those who were born under these flares were known as Ruidus born. And I think Imogen asks, when was the last time, a Ruidus born era was? And Astani said it was about 2.5 years ago. The interest in this has been growing, so the records have been growing, and the Loomis twins were just very interested in this, and they're actually planning a trek to Eos in order to visit the Omen archive to find out more. Imogen then asks if Istani knows Professor Khadija Sumal, whom is the person that authored the study in the book that she found. And Istani is familiar with Professor Sumal, but they never really crossed paths. The party then asks if the Loomis twins left anything with Istani, because again, Imogen is looking for these torn out pages of the study she found that referenced her mother, and presumably they think the Loomis twins might have had those torn out pages. But Istani reveals that no, he doesn't have anything of theirs, and there was nothing on the bodies. So if they did have those pages, the attackers presumably took those. Fern then asks if the twins were Ruidus born themselves, and Istani says he's not sure. He didn't know their date of birth, and it's not something that they willingly, revealed. And they're basically very interested in all this Ruidus born stuff. And so they're like, is there records of when we can see when the dates were to figure out who was Ruidus born? And Orm, well, I think they're doing history checks or something, and Orm recalls a figure known as Drassig, who was a tyrant king, and he was thought to be Ruidus born, and also Elixion, who was this great hero during the calamity, but just up and vanished one day. And also the person who ascended to become the Matron of Ravens is also thought to have been a Ruidus born. And Istani basically is there's a study going on. It's basically trying to research all of these Ruidus born people in order to either dispel superstition about them or pinpoint the actual effects that may be on their lives. And that's ongoing, but there is a stigma on these people, or it's almost an omen to be Ruidus born. But Istani says that the scholars, as of late, are it's less of an omen and more of a this person's life is going to be important in some way, whether good or bad. And as they're talking about this, Fern's do Ruidus born people have crazy dreams because of what we know Imogen to be experiencing? And Istani says that Yeah, the twins never spoke of anything like that, but Ruidus-born people apparently do have like strange markings on their body, which Imogen herself has these markings on her hands. And the party asks, okay, so you said the Loomis twins found you through your research. Like, what specific research did they find you through? And he said it was this like paper he did on the celestial movements and the solstice and how mages would like utilize the solstice for powerful spells and rituals, and that he learned that there were these signs of other places and other worlds, and he researched people who supposedly came from other realms and would like briefly appear before vanishing back to wherever they came from. And he even theorized that Ruidus was perhaps a source of this travel, like a waypoint or something, but ultimately concluded that it probably wasn't, as it seems to have a life of its own. Fern's like, whoa, like, has anyone ever been to Rudis? And Istani says no one that he knows of has ever attempted that. Um, that would be pretty crazy. But he's like, you know what? I have this big telescope. How about you guys come back tonight and like you can take a look at Rudis yourselves? And they're like, heck yes, like we are definitely about that. So Imogen, before they kind of get up, pulls out the ruin fragment that she had taken from their travel here and is like, do you know what this is? And Istani does not, but he's like, I have a friend. I'll show it to him. He lives here. He can maybe help us figure out what this is. I know this is a lot, sorry. But so then after that, they're kind of like moseying away, and Laudna kind of steals a moment with Imogen, and she's like, how are you feeling about all this? Like, you know, you have those marks on your arms. Like, what are you going through? And Imogen's like, I don't know if I'm Ruidus born. Maybe my mother was. You know, I got these marks on my arms. I don't know what's going on. And while she's looking at the marks on her arm, she remembers that she's blue. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm blue. And so they ask Astani, he's like, do you have any ideas like how we could fix this? And he's like, you basically need somebody to like remove a lesser curse. They're like, awesome. Thank you. Um, Fern then takes those Ruidus-born tomes and is like looking through the potential Ruidus-born people and is like, is Keyleth the Ruidus-born? And we don't get a concrete answer on that, but they're basically just obsessed with like figuring out who is. But then they leave the house to return later tonight to go to the telescope. But Astani actually takes them to where the Loomis twins were attacked, and they basically investigate it a little bit. I think Orem, it's a tree where they were attacked, and Orem looks in the tree and finds like this toxin that was presumably the poison they used, and he pockets that. And Astani's like, yeah, they came out from the tree, and the two that escaped ran that way. And he points like to a southward direction. And in that southward direction, there's like this river that runs through the city. And at the base of it, there's like a statue holding a pot, and like a seemingly endless stream of water is pouring from it. So this fascinates them. And they basically come to find out that it's like an enchantment that is, you know, pouring out this endless water. Well, long story short, they're obsessed with this. And so Fern turns into a frog. They tie a little rope around her, and she jumps in because she wants to see like how far this goes. And next thing she knows, she's like deep in this like abyss. It feels like the bottom of the ocean, and she just can't hear anything, can barely see much. But she sees these like two blue orbs of like light in the distance, but they're getting closer and larger. And so they just start pulling back on the rope, and she pops out like just in time. And it's like, yeah, I think I was about to get eaten. And presumably, I guess we don't know, I shouldn't say presumably, but it seems like that was the plane of water, and that's where that water was coming from through some enchantment. So after that, they're like, okay, heist time. What do we need to do before the heist tonight? And they're like, we need to do some shopping. So they have a quick round of shopping. There's 3 places here in the Heartmoor Hamlet. We've got the Moss Cobble Wares, Not Forgotten, and Witherbone Medicines. Moss Cobble Wares is a general store. They just pick up a few things here, some magnets. I think Fern gets a fishing rod, and they get some gloves for F.C.G. Meanwhile, Orm and F.C.G go to Witherbone Medicines to look for a remove curse for Imogen. There is a remove curse potion, but they ultimately don't get it because F.C.G's like, I can handle this, don't worry about it. But they do buy a Tanglefoot bag, and they also come to realize that the other heist rival crew has been here as well. So F.C.G lies and is like, yeah, we're their friends. Remind me what they bought so we don't buy the same thing. And so they're able to learn that The heist rival crew got some Tanglefoot bags, some smoke bombs, and like a vial of gaseous form, I believe. And finally, not forgotten, I think Ashton and Imogen go there, and it's basically like this wood toy shop where everything's like hand carved, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Chetney would love this place. We got to bring him back here." And they ultimately get a couple of toys, one little like creepy doll for Laudna, and a Jack in the Box as well. Um, then they obviously the party all split up to go to those different places. I don't remember if I said that or not. But so then everyone reconvenes back at their inn and kind of catch up and is like, all right, are we ready to do this tonight? And or I think it's the next night, and everyone's like, yeah, but let's go check out the telescope tonight. Except Chetney, he's like, we don't all need to go check out the telescope. Like, I'll stay here. And they're like, okay, cool. And so everyone else goes to the telescope, and they meet back up with Astani, and one by one they're basically looking through the telescope at Rhodus until Orem, who rolls very highly, looks at it and sees he sees a storm, and he's like, oh gosh, like Imogen needs to see this. So he pulls her back and lets her see it, and it's the same storm that she's seen from her dreams. And that's where it goes to break.
Yeah, and I loved how Orem pulled it out, because Matt was like, okay, this is the last roll, because you guys, you're going to miss it here.
Yeah.
But yeah, after the break in the second half, Orem has Imogen looked at the telescope in the storm. It's not the same storm from her dreams, but it is so like clearly of the same vein that she's ruffled by this. And not only is she ruffled by it from like the sight of it, she's disturbed because it's always been her dream, basically. She didn't really, and she even says herself, I didn't realize it was real. Like, I didn't realize, like, that is basically the storm that I see in my dreams, and they're seeing this on the surface of this moon. She's pretty shell-shocked by this, and, the party's kind of talking through, what do you know about it? Is it possible like your mom went there, or anything like this, or like, and actually F.C.G's like, are you sure you don't like remember a memory with your mom, or like something happened with your mom? Like maybe it's like repressed, and she's just like flat out, no, like I never met my mom. I don't remember any of that stuff. And they even ask like, hey, maybe you could like talk to your dad and see like, what does he think? And she's pretty resoundingly is like, no, I don't think he wants to speak to me. Like, basically we're not on good terms. And so that's not an option, but she is committed to going to talk to this professor, Kadaji Sumal, and basically trying to find out more information, or at least going to the place that he worked at. I think they called it like the something seminary, something to that effect. Because it wasn't clear from Astani if this place in Eos if this individual is like long gone, retired, whatever. Because Astani is very old, and Matt points out that this professor was, quote, before Astani's time. Right. So who knows? We do have Fern, and I can't remember if this is before the break or after, but basically asks if Keyleth was a moon touched, a Ruidus touched figure. And Astani flips through the book and basically says, it's really not like more recent people. It's kind of a bit earlier in time. So there's no way to know. And it's funny though, because Marisha is kind of like, I don't know, is Keyleth, so anyway, all that to say, they just decide, let's good info. Let's call it a night, and let's do our heist the next day. So they go to bed. They decide that they do want to still keep like a watch. They still want to keep this happening. They do give their gift to Marisha, to Laudna, this little puppet, which she named Shishimi. Much to everyone's like facial response of like, okay, yeah,
sure.
And also, I also forgot to mention too, and I can't remember if this was pre-break or not either, but when they were looking at the site where the assassins had basically killed the Loomis twins, Orem did jump up in a tree and found like this black, like almost like petrified ichor or something. as well. I forgot to mention that. All that to say, Marisha gets her new doll Sashimi, and Chetney is like super pissed because this was apparently the gift he was working on for Ladna, is a partner for Pate, and is visibly upset that this has happened. But Sashimi and Pate have this moment, and they seem to take to each other. And anyway, it's just a fun moment. But the party decides. And they also show Chetney this Jack in the Box too, which terrifies him. Getting to the important stuff. Party goes to sleep. Imogen has her typical dream, and not only is she having her dream, but she's been told that, or she's realized prior to this, that her dreams typically seem to happen at a quicker cadence as the orbiting of the moon like completes its circle, and that it's around every 6 months that this cycle happens, and that the cadence is kicking up and up. So she's going to be having them more and more often. But so she has this dream. It's the storm, it's the house, and like we saw in the previous dream, she feels this tug towards the storm. She's also, as she's sleeping, she has her hand in the satchel holding the gnarl rock or the fragment from it.
Yeah.
And basically she decides to step into the storm. And once she's in the storm, she mentioned with Lana in a previous episode that maybe it was the right decision to do that. Maybe it'd be the right thing to do. Her mother is still saying run, but she steps into it regardless. And she feels immediate cold and loneliness and the sense of abandonment. And she sees a shadowy figure in the storm in front of her that she just senses she senses a total feeling of malevolence and dread and evilness from. And the shadowy figure, immediately 2 others step out from behind that person, and then 2 more from that one, and then 2 more from that one. And they're all essentially just staring at her. And then there's a boom crash of lightning, and she basically wakes up. She didn't realize this, but Fern was, a couple of the party members were already awake, doing their watch, so to speak. And Fern, who's one of the people who was awake, is immediately like, hey, are you okay? What happened? Imogen's freaked out. They wake up Ladna. Ladna had been talking about keeping a dream journal, and so she's immediately like scribbling down notes and asking Imogen questions about what happened. And Imogen's pretty shell-shocked. There is a funny detail where Fern reveals that she was basically pickpocketing Imogen, and is like, I removed my hand from her pocket. But is also aware that Imogen's been holding on to the gnarl rock again. Right. But they basically talk back and forth for ideas. Fern basically says, yeah, next time this happens, you should like look around a bit. To which Imogen's like, okay. It's kind of like, this stuff's pretty crazy.
Yeah, this was traumatic, by the way.
Yeah, this was no bueno. So, anyway, am I forgetting anything from the dream before we move on to the?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. You guys can listen in the comments if I'm missing anything else. But all that to say, in the morning they decide, okay, we're gonna do our heist. Matt tells them, hey, make sure you have the spells that you need for this. And so F.C.G actually decides, hey, I could cure your curse, but I'm going to hold off because I need to have the right spells for tonight.
You're blue now.
They time skip. I actually just remembered an important detail.
Oh.
The little like lightning-esque scars.
All right.
Fern rolls a natural 20 and notices, because Astani mentioned that these people are typically marked in some way. Mm-hmm. Fern notices that these markings have grown about 1/4 of an inch on her hands and forearms. And Ladna basically realizes, in basically an out of character moment in talking with Laura, that she would have realized over the time she spent with her, these markings growing over time as well. That's a very important detail. All this to say, they head to the Twilight Mirror Museum. The host, Ivan Hydroga, has his naturally very much over the top presentation of the event.
Yeah.
He shoots confetti out of his sleeves. It's really great. And the opposing party, who's also up to the task, is revealed to be that troop that they ran into at the rest stop while they were traveling into the Heartmoor, basically. kind of like the curiously somewhat suspicious group. This is basically them. Hytroga basically sets out the rules, and then for the next like 15 minutes, the party pretty much drives him crazy with like, can we walk in the front door? Can we do this? Can we do that? And he's finally like, all right, enough. Like, you will figure it out. Just, I almost felt like Matt being like, okay, guys, like, come on, let's do this. But does mention that the item to locate is a, let me pull this up, make sure I have this right here. I think it was an earring. Yeah, it's an earring from a Djinn named Haruban,
I think.
Harden. Sorry, guys.
Something like that.
Basically, this Djinn who was convinced that he needed to basically dismantle his entire empire due to a beggar that like undid his logic or something to that effect.
It was like a trick. He got like tricked in a riddle type of thing.
Yeah, and so it's a personal effect from this person. And it's kept in the vault, not a literal vault, but like an area within the museum, the vault. And their job is basically to go and retrieve that. So F.C.G. does take note of the opposing party's weapons, what they have. And they decide, okay, yeah, we're going to... And actually, Hydroga basically says, like, yeah, do what you have to do to get the item within reason. You know, don't break something you shouldn't break. And even FCG is like, so like those guys, can we kill them? Like, is that okay? Like, is that frowned upon? You know, but basically Hydroga says, okay, ready, set, go. And that is where the episode ends. And that's what happened on episode 19 of campaign 3 of Critical Role.
Yes, sir. Well done.
I think that was a long recap.
It was. There's so much packed into this episode. Very lore heavy.
Yeah. So, first impressions, what'd you think?
I liked it. I mean, I've been wanting to know what's going on with Rudis for like 2 campaigns now. It's been a very slow drip. I mean, not that in campaign 1 it's not like it was really anything, but it's always been really interesting that there's 2 moons and there's the smaller red one that, you know, especially with having seen Legend of Vox Machina now, and you know, with the rituals and the importance there. And anyway, I'm gonna go on too long of a tangent here, but the point is I liked it because we got a whole bunch of moon lore and that was satisfying. And
we got the moon lore.
Yeah. And now we're at the heist, so I'm really excited for next episode as well. But you know, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea because not much happened this episode, but we still got a whole lot, so I was about it. What about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, you and I are like super biased with, like, we love the lore drops. We love the world building, you know, as we kind of discover the world. I feel like you and I are always going to walk away being like, yeah, that episode was awesome. And that's how I felt. I mean, you know, the first half for the most part, or rather like the first 2 hours were essentially like a big dialogue sesh. And I thought it was great, you know, so I definitely can understand someone who's like, okay, yeah, you know, the moon, got it.
Cool.
But I actually, and I think I would not have appreciated it as much if not for our conversation in a previous episode where you sort of kind of laid out, like, here's all the backstory from previous campaigns, is what people have been saying for all this time, including things like, is Ruidus a more sentient thing? You know, is it actually a moon, or is it something, you know? And so I can't remember when that conversation was, if that was after a Legend of Vox Machina episode, or if that was maybe like around episode 15 or 16. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Probably whatever the last time we talked about the Loomis Twins. But that gave me a lot of great context for then this episode, where I was kind of like, oh my gosh, he was onto something. So I loved it. I thought it was a great episode. And yeah, I'm really excited around. I guess I also just appreciate the fact that, you know, this has all the makings of like a side quest or like a filler quest, and yet it still feels great. Still feels like like full of direction, like we're heading a certain direction rather than just let's get this over with.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the episode, and really excited for tonight's episode too.
Me too. I'm very hyped for, like, you know, Ocean's 11 type of
shenanigans. I keep going between Ocean's 11 and Halloween Heist for
Wait,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Brooklyn
Oh,
Nine-Nine,
yeah,
where
yeah,
like
yeah,
every season they have
yeah,
like their
yeah.
Halloween heist. So I keep just envisioning Jake Peralta, the Halloween heist. But
I
yeah,
think that's probably a pretty apt combination of what we're gonna get.
yeah.
Uh, but all right, there's so much really to talk about in this episode. But first and foremost, I'm gonna give us a little bit of credit. Not that this was a big crazy call, but we did theorize that the Red Storm in Imogen's dream might have something to do with the Red Moon Rudis, and that
Right.
pretty much confirmed. So good job, us.
Yeah. Good job, us.
Um,
We don't always get them right.
we
We mostly
rarely
don't.
do,
But when we do,
we'll definitely let you know about it.
we will let you know.
um, but I guess that's a good place to start as any is all of this Ruidus stuff.
Yeah, dude, what's up with? I mean, it felt like it could not have been a just tame comment, just a random comment of, yeah, I'm theorizing there's other worlds, other realms out there. I was like, bruh, dude, are we about to is Exandria unlimited, truly unlimited? Is that what we're heading towards? I mean,
it seems like, yeah, with multiverse confirmed. There's already kind of a multiverse in the sense that there's like the prime material plane, there's the Feywild, there's the Hells, or so
right.
that I don't know if you call that a multiverse or not, but we're speaking of like a whole level beyond that. Like there's multiple prime material planes, multiple things.
I kind of wonder if it is like an intentional lore comment that opens up Critical Role media to, hey, we have an Exandria steampunk campaign,
Yeah.
or, things like that other people, because we've kind of sensed this happening of like Matt and co not withdrawing at all, but just sort of setting up other important people, like Abria as the DM of EXU. And because they can't do it forever, right? And this thing is becoming a widely expanding brand. So yeah, I kind of wonder if it was like a subtle lore comment to explain future drops of content that's not so, I guess, like fantasy driven or medieval esque, I guess, Lord of the Rings esque, or
like if they want to make campaign for sci-fi, it could still be in the Exandrian multiverse, but maybe it's something completely different. So I think that's definitely part of it, and that's super exciting. Like even if Matt is the one to still do something vastly different, like I love that all three campaigns have taken place in the same continuity, but I feel like, let's say there are going to be 7 campaigns. I bet at some point they probably do want to like massively change it up. Play with a new world in a way. So this could be another way to do that.
Modern day D&D.
Yeah, exactly.
The darkest timeline.
But yeah, I think this is something that those are some, I think, absolutely on point practical reasons for this. But I also think it's something Matt has been baking in for a long time, like maybe even as early as campaign 1. It's just now it's the first time it's ever come to the forefront. Which I guess this is a good time to bring this up. But Plane Rider Rin, which is a name that was dropped that Istani dropped as somebody he's worked with. We've heard that name before in campaign 2. We've never met that character on screen. But they're a plane rider, is somebody that like travels between the planes. So I think it'd be really cool if we do meet Plane Rider Rin.
So it's plane like rider, not plane rider.
Right, like R-I-D-E-R.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah, someone who writes about the planes, I guess. Oh, okay, this makes more sense.
But yeah, so she is this. At least I think it's a she. It might be a he. I'm not sure. But studied like planar travel and like all these arcane ley lines, which again kind of ties into the solstice and this 30-year cycle that might be happening with the power. So I feel like all these pieces are lining up. But in slight spoilers, but not too big, because like I said, this person never actually showed up in campaign 2. Let me just make sure I'm at the right part of my notes here. Yeah, so in campaign 2 at one point, the party finds themselves in like this they're with another NPC. I'm trying to do this like as spoiler free as possible. They're with another
Okay.
NPC, and that NPC knew Plane Rider Rin and had some like items of theirs. So later, the party finds themselves in this like cave that Plane Rider Rin had like she wasn't there at the time, but had like utilized and was in another plane of existence. So they had like this study set up in another plane of existence. Um, so I don't know.
Okay.
It's just cool that this name got dropped again, and like these little seeds that Met planted in previous campaigns are bearing
Yeah.
fruit basically.
Yeah, hats off to him. Yeah, I like how things just seem to click together, like past data points and stuff, where it doesn't feel forced. Yeah, and I have we heard Ruidus referred to as the Moon of Ill Omen previously?
I feel like we probably have, but I don't like remember that specifically.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because it's the language that the Tetrarch used in EXU, who
Right.
said there's basically where the parties in Nirdalpak towards the end of EXU, the first part, they're talking to this sage-esque person who's the leader of this hidden city, and the person basically says there's an ill omen on Taldore, or maybe it's even specifically on their city, and is like looking up at the moon and like basically how like there's something coming, like something. And I think even Abria even mentions the two moons were inside at the time. But it's an interesting connection, though. It's a very
Yeah.
intentional language. I feel like that there is an ill omen, and obviously Ruidus has always been there, but it to me connects those storylines a little bit. Where EXU
Absolutely.
had like this kind of behind the scenes macro, like the Ono Plateau and like what's really happening on Taldore, and linking that forwards now to Ruidus kind of makes sense to me.
Absolutely. I stamp that, send it, because I think so. And the omen is probably the solstice that is, which again, that's happened before, but clearly there is some entity or organization that is planning to use this for ill purposes. And whoever is sending these assassins, I feel like, and we can kind of, I don't want to dive there yet, but I do want to talk more about that. But I think 100% that has to be what the Tetrarch was talking about. I imagine. I mean, y'all let
Yeah.
us know in the comments if you think so. Um, but I found the specific part of my notes, and I wanted to say one more thing about the Plane Rider Rin that's very interesting. So in campaign 2, when they were in the study or whatever, they found some of Plane Rider Rin's notes, and this is basically what was on those notes. And again, they studied the planes of existence and everything. So Rin's notes pertaining to the planes of existence noted a slow shift in the structure between the planes and a possible sudden shift in the cosmic tapestry down the road, remaking the cosmos. So
What does that mean?
that to me sounds like the solstice as well, like where these ley lines and planes are like at the perfect position to like make something happen. And Astani even brought that up about how mages utilize this special energy to cast like the most powerful
Right.
spells. So for my money, there's some entity or organization that is planning to use this solstice for something real bad. And Ruidus is a main part of that somehow.
Yeah. Do you think Ruidus is sentient? Like, do we think it's like, are we talking about Fifth Element here, where it's an evil entity incorporated into a big red moon, or
I,
I mean, or is it just is a creation of you know just total like spitball, the betrayer gods, that it's like a leftover artifact, and it sort of emanates and is the source of this arcane power. I mean, I don't know, I'm just
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a little column A, a little column B. Like maybe it is sentient and it is a betrayer god that has been like nesting all this time until it could, you know, hatch again or something. Astani himself said, I forget the exact quote, but I mentioned it in the recap about how he first thought that maybe Ruidus was like a waypoint that enabled this like multiverse
right.
travel, but then he was like,
Yeah.
I concluded that wasn't the case because I feel like it's a living thing. And he didn't really expand on that, but he thinks it's alive, and
Yeah.
he's one of the most knowledgeable people on it, presumably. So
I need to go back and watch our discussion on this, because this is a lot of the language that we used of just like hypothesizing, like what people have said.
mhm.
And you had talked about what some fans had kind of theorized over the last few years, and so there's a lot of similarities with that discussion that I wish I could remember, but
Yeah.
I got baby brain, so.
So,
But
so
yeah, no, I mean, this is interesting though. It's kind of mind blowing, honestly. I'm kind of just like, dude, like where, you know, is this campaign going to end on Ruidus, or like, I mean, what's going on?
yeah, I mean, it was hilarious how Fern was like, "Let's build us a ship to get there."
Yeah.
Which, for those of you that are familiar with like the different, not like the different flavors of D&D, there's like Spelljammer, which is like spaceships. So a lot of people have theorized that maybe we're getting like a Spelljammer in this campaign. Maybe Belltales are going to space, and maybe even multiversal, uh, you know, out of our universe even. So I think that would all be crazy. But yeah, I mean, to me, Ruidus is something more than just a floating rock. Now, whether that's a betrayer god, I know some people have even speculated that. We've talked about the floating cities that were the ancient floating cities. Maybe it was even one of those ancient floating cities that during the calamity managed to like eject itself out of this war between the gods and has just been like biding
Yeah.
time ever since or something. So maybe it's
Dalaran
like,
style or
yeah,
something.
yeah. So maybe it's like, I mean, they don't have to be evil, I guess, but it seemingly is like an evil vibe. But like evil ancient wizards or something, which, and pardon the segue here if you have more to say, not that I'm getting away from it, but speaking of like evil wizards, these figures that showed up in the storm, what are you taking from that? Do you think those are people literally on Ruidus? Do you think it's more metaphorical and maybe like these are the people planning to use the solstice for nefarious purposes? Both, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I have so many like theories in my head. Are like, are these the 8 who are imprisoned on Ruidus, and they, extend their influence, in some way? Or is it because also I'm thinking of like, what's the connection with Imogen? Like, how is she able to, and for lack of a better phrasing, like see them, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and there was an interesting detail where she said, she asked Matt, can I read sort of the main figure's thoughts or any of their thoughts? And Matt, interestingly enough, said, no, they're not actually physically present because it's a dream.
Right, right.
Not saying they aren't present on Ruidus or what have you, but so even in her dreamlike state, she's not like being transported elsewhere where she's
Right.
encountering something. Like, it is a dream,
Right.
right? And so, bearing that in mind, for me, it's less of like literal characters who are in the storm and more of like a metaphor on, these are individuals utilizing Ruidus in some nefarious way. And maybe, like you said, they are behind the attacks on Keyleth and on the Loomis Twins. Makes the most sense to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I also thought that that was a really pertinent fact that Matt said, that you can't read their minds. So like that, because I mean, they could have been sentient like things that were invading her, like type of
Right.
thing. So I
Right.
did like that we got that clarity. Um, but yeah, I mean, for my money, I think if not that those figures are literally like the boss that have ordered these strikes, but I do think they're connected. I mean, I think that this all has to be connected, at least the attacks and whatever's happening with Ruidus, because the people that are being targeted are like the people that could stop them, basically, like the Loomis twins who were obsessed with studying this. Keyleth, who is her whole purpose is to make sure like the planes play nice. So I feel like that all lines up too nicely for it not to be related. Um, but and correct me if I'm wrong, the like main figure that she sees at first, where they like then more appear. I think it was a woman, and so
Yes, that's right. Actually, a woman. He said, standing, I think, strong and defiant. Yeah,
and
but couldn't see the face. That's right.
right, and so I'm wondering, could it be her mom? Since she never met her mom, doesn't know what her mom looks like. It doesn't really check out with the fact that her mom is like telling her to run and then would be like malicious. But I don't know. Low hanging fruit, but I was just like, mysterious woman. She doesn't know who her mom is.
Yeah, I mean, and also it kind of makes sense from like a story point. Like you want the big bad to be, not someone who gets, in typical like Square Enix style, where like you fight the final boss and there's like another final boss who like you're like, who's this person?
Yeah.
Like I don't think we'll see something like that. So I mean, either Matt I would assume in the near future is going to start placing breadcrumbs for what that big bad's going to be, or in the very least for like the end of this storyline. Maybe the breadcrumbs are already there, and you're right. Maybe it is her mother. So I mean, yeah, the lining up of saying run, and it could be in her dreams. I mean, she's having these thoughts of her mother saying run, and then this is like the form of her mother succumbed to whatever power the storm offers. Because we also know that Imogen is sort of being tempted, One Ring style, by
Yeah.
the Gnarl Rock, and
Yeah.
she's twice now, can't seem to resist, going to sleep, reaching in and grabbing it. So there'd be some um, interesting rhythms there with like that being if that was the case for her mom and now being what she's facing.
Yeah.
And she even, interestingly enough, uses language around. I mean, obviously they don't know the story, but uses language there when they're asking her about the storm. She says she doesn't want to do this anymore. She wants to learn how to control this, including, I think the implication was like whatever power there may be, laying dormant with this whole thing. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And I liked what you said there about perhaps her mom succumbed to this power or whatever it might have been, because there were, I mean, I don't recall how many people that study was on. We might not know. It might be part of the torn out pages, but we know the study was studying multiple people that were having these dreams. So maybe the people that in the storm were like the previous generation of all the dreamers, and maybe her mom's telling her to run, but that is her mom, and like maybe someone else is like utilizing these Ruidus born people and like using them as conduits to do whatever they want to do. But like maybe her mom, like, if I'm butchering this, but if Imogen like goes to the storm, she might like lose her own agency, and that's maybe what her mom is warning her about. And
Yeah,
perhaps her mom is alive and is one of those people and is evil, but has like lost herself or something.
maybe there's people who are sort of gifted. I mean, here's the wondering is someone who's Ruidus touched the same, just different language around these people who were experiencing the Red Storm? Or are these two different entities and Imogen is like that special person who's
It's
both,
both. Mm.
which I don't know. That'd be interesting too.
Yeah, I think we're both on the same page. It seems like that she's definitely Ruidus born,
Definitely.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. No doubt, no
Um,
doubt, no doubt, no doubt. But that's the reason I wonder is, are these synonymous terms? Because I'm like, well, then is her mom one too? And like, what are the odds of that they would both be one?
yeah. Well, maybe it's
So I don't know.
genetic,
True.
but yeah. I mean, for my money, I feel like her mom was also one. Um, and yeah, I I had honestly forgotten that Imogen had markings on her skin until they talked about it this episode.
Dude, I missed this or something because I was like going back, being like, when did this happen? What? Like I was confused, thinking this was the curse in some way. Yeah, I need to go back and like watch like the first episode or second episode to get, but I think she re characterized it in this episode where she described it like almost like someone who's been struck by lightning. Like sometimes like they have like the streaks of
Yeah, yeah.
scars, something to that effect. Um,
I just pulled up her character art just to see, and yeah, it's on there. So like, this is something that was planned, clearly. Not that I didn't think it was, but yeah, I had forgotten that as well. So very interesting. And I mean, just like you said, lightning and there's a storm, so it all kind of aesthetically plays together nicely. Huh. Yeah, purple lightning bolts streaking up from her wrists, which have grown slightly over the decade. And she has
Yeah.
purple hair, so I wonder if like that's not her natural hair color, but because of something that happened to her or something, that's there's like this purple energy within her, which is interesting that it's not red.
Yeah.
It's
I
kind of
was
just
actually thinking
splitting
that.
hairs though, but
Yeah.
hmm.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm trying to see if there's anything. Not that we need to move on if you have more on the whole Ruidus thing, but I'm just looking over my notes to see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on. There, all those NPCs that were mentioned as potential Ruidus born were pretty interesting. There was Drassig, who was like that tyrant king, and we don't know. Y'all correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that's never really been somebody. I mean, it's an ancient figure, so obviously they were never like on screen. But I feel like we don't really know too much about them other than like Tyrant King in the time before, uh, like the current present era. So we have that person, and then we have Elixion. I wanted to say, and I'm trying to find my thing here, and I can't
Is this the
find
hero
it.
who disappeared?
Yeah, yeah. And I do not remember having heard that name ever, but I think we must have because a lot of people like immediately recognized that when that came on. Um, so Elixion, dubbed the Apotheon, might be pronouncing that incorrectly, was a mortal champion blessed by three of the prime deities in the Calamity. So he was born in Wildmount, under the full moon of Ruidus, cursing him to have a bad life. In the Calamity, he was granted blessings. He fought in many battles. Uh, this doesn't mention him disappearing, but Matt mentioned that, so maybe that was new information to us.
Looks like he was
Um,
mentioned in the Taldore Reborn book.
oh, okay, that might have been what it was. I still need to
We
read
need a
that.
I know we gifted one to one of our followers. We need to like dig into that book, I think, because I
Yeah.
know they also there's some commentary around the Seelie and Unseelie quartz, and some of those characters as well. And so it just would be good, I think, to get familiar with some of the characters mentioned so that when they do
Absolutely.
pop up in episodes, we're like, oh, I
Yeah,
know that.
apparently there's a lot of good information. We should like I don't know how, we'll figure this out, but it would be cool to like I bought one, so I have one. Maybe I could read it, then give it to
Yeah,
you and
okay.
you could read it and we could do like an episode on it. But
Yeah.
there's also The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, which is probably a little bit less relevant because that was more of the land of the last campaign. Um I haven't read that either, but I've heard there's some good stuff. And then they just released one, which I'm interested to check out too. The
Called the
Call of
Netherdeep.
the Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's mentioned in that one too. Elixion.
Oh, okay, so yeah, we should definitely figure out something with that. But I mean, the classic "he vanished" is like, or he's coming back. We're gonna see him. Is like what my mind immediately jumped to. Which, yeah, the time frames don't make sense at all. But I mean, if we're talking about like multiversal travel, I think there's some time dilation or just shenanigans that could be going on, where he could still be a face
Yeah.
we see this campaign. Maybe he's one of the freaking people in the storm if he was a Ruidus born, you know?
Yeah, yeah. This is interesting. Called the Netherdeep, this adventure module. It's run through levels 3 through 12, begins in Zorhas, which I think is in Wildmount,
Mm-hmm.
progresses to Ankarel, which
Mm,
could be relevant,
yeah.
then moves to a new location, the Netherdeep, blah, 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 blah. Under the watchful gaze of Ruidus, twisting the fate of those who can change history, adventurers seek to release a forgotten champion of the gods, thought destroyed, but instead awakened in his prison in the depths of Exandria.
Oh.
Could be Elixion.
Oh, but it doesn't say though, but
Doesn't
like
say anything.
explicitly. I mean, that
Yeah.
sounds like him.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we need to check that
Interesting.
book out too.
So, I mean, I feel like what you just said is probably definitely him. So this is not probably not even worth saying anymore. But another idea I had was if he mysteriously vanished, and that theory earlier we were talking about like if Rudis was like a civilization that ejected to like get out of the calamity. I mean, he was a hero of the calamity, so I guess he wouldn't have gone. But maybe he's on Rudis, and that's why he vanished.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I
I
don't know.
think it's probably whatever you were just reading.
Or he's in this prison that I mentioned in the Netherdeep. So okay, cool. All right. Well, what else you want to talk about? Yeah, this is man. There's a lot to think about for sure.
Yeah. Well, one last person that was potentially Rudis born worth mentioning was the Raven Queen herself, which she's just a
which I don't know any of the context around this character, but I know she's been mentioned several times, even in this campaign. But I think the language was this character before they descended into becoming the Raven Queen or something to that effect.
Yeah, it was potentially Rudis born. So the real short version is that the Raven Queen, whomsoever ascended to be the Raven Queen, was once like a mortal person, and they ascended to godhood by killing, or we don't know if they killed, but they somehow defeated the current god of death and thus became the god of death themselves. So she's just like a super interesting character in the lore, a person that became a god essentially. So I'm just and there's other deeper connections with stuff that's happened in other campaigns, but without getting into spoiler territory, just thought it was really cool that she also was Rudis born, and it'd be interesting if we find out more about maybe her mortal history at any point in what we're uncovering here. But yeah, just wanted to do that, throw that out there. But yeah, I'm ready to move on from all things Rudis, if you are.
Yeah, sure.
Anything in particular you wanted to hit next?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about it because we didn't really get any new information, but just getting when the party gets taken to like the area where the Loomis twins were killed.
Yeah.
Obviously we get like the detail of the like sort of the petrified ichor in the wood.
Right. Like
and
the toxin.
Yeah, and which we kind of already knew they had used poisonous weapons of some kind. Really no new info there. I did like Chetney admiring the tree or whatever, and the party kind of all realized that Astani's been there the whole time.
They're like, oh,
like, okay, be on my way then. And I like how they keep gifting him limes also.
Yeah.
But so not really any new info there, but yeah, I don't really have anything to say about it other than just like, yeah, we keep getting these data points around this attack, and still don't quite know much about it. Seems like the party needs to go to EOS to find out more. I will say, Astani does mention that the Loomis twins had said that day, basically, we have something to tell you, something we discovered, and that's the day they were killed. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting to me because I know Orem originally hypothesized that the attack on Keyleth was like testing the defenses.
Mm-hmm.
This seems more related to, maybe the attack wasn't on Keyleth. Maybe it was on his husband.
Yeah, maybe because we don't really know much. I mean, we know he was a guard. I think that was confirmed, but maybe he was a guard that was into astronomy and was,
maybe he was Rudis touched. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
because think about this: if the attacks are so quick and they happen so fast, it doesn't make sense that they never came back. It was assumed to be for Keyleth. What if it never was?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think. I mean, there's also. I think this is just aesthetic and nice flavor, but there's also the literal like big moon, little moon thing. Like they refer to themselves as the moons, so like that probably. Maybe it was just a choice Liam made for fun, and Matt like took that and ran with it, or maybe his partner was really into the moon and knew too much.
Well, Orem is clearly like oblivious if that's the case, because Imogen even asks like, "Hey, so like, are you guys into moons?" And he's like, "This is just a tattoo." Like,
yeah, okay, yeah, he did say that.
So, but like, I guess those two attacks are just so wildly different in terms of the implication of them that it feels like there's a big missing piece there that we haven't figured out yet.
I agree with that, but devil's advocate, the only thing that that could make it make sense is that the Ashari people are the ones tasked with keeping the planes intact. So if this organization that's trying to use the solstice, which is the aligning of the planes for some nefarious purposes, the Ashari peoples are probably like the first people that would get in their way. So maybe it was just trying to see like how the Ashari people would deal with an attack. But that being said, I do agree that I think there's maybe someone else was the real target there, and it wasn't Keelan.
Maybe the attack was enough to get them off course of whatever they were focused on, like without them even realizing it. Because obviously the Loomis twins were killed because they knew something, or they had poked their nose into something too far, I guess.
Right.
Which is interesting that this shadowy organization is alert enough.
Yeah, how they know.
Yeah, and so, but it seems like there's something really important that needs to stay hidden. And so maybe the attack on the Ashari was, it was enough of a distraction where now they went in totally different direction. I don't know, but
yeah, it is interesting because I was wondering that too. Like, if it wasn't Keyleth and it was this Orum's partner or whoever, how did this organization know? With the Loomis twins, like maybe it's because they're out here researching. Maybe they asked the wrong person who's a member of this organization or whatever, and they were like, "We got to kill these people." But I definitely think that's an interesting question of how they know when people are getting close to messing with them. Oh gosh, something was on the tip of my brain, but it's left me. We were talking about shoot. All right, I'm gonna try not to think about it. Maybe it'll come back to me. Okay. Hopefully it will. But
I don't have anything else to say about it other than just like, yeah, I mean, the party's. It kind of makes me wonder: is the party heading towards an encounter like this of their own in the near future?
I feel like because they're the ones now barking up this tree. Like whatever rang the alarm for the Loomis twins is probably going to get rang for them. So I think so, for sure. And I mean that'll be interesting. I wonder. I mean, obviously we've got the heist, and so we'll see what comes after. But I wonder, are they going to go to EOS, or I wonder what thread they're going to pull after this. I feel like it's got to be this though, like this story, unless something like big happens in Drusar that like pulls them back.
Wasn't well? I mean,
I remember what I was going to say. Sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
We also have Delilah Briarwood in this mix, who's up to something. We don't know what, but we do know that via campaign 1, via the Legend of Vox Machina show, she was literally already trying to use the solstice for something. So the fact that some entity, something is trying to use it again, and she's out there doing something, not saying it's her, but she might be playing a role in this, or at least her own role, similarly trying to use it.
Right. Yeah, maybe she wants to return or something. I don't know. But
sorry for cutting you off. I just had a eureka moment where I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was saying. So,
shoot.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting. It just feels like we're heading towards some kind of encounter. It does feel like the story. I actually do remember what I was going to say. It does feel like the story is pulling us deeper into Marquette. I think Matt mentioned that EOS was past the Hellcatch Valley. I think
so. Yeah.
So you're going farther into Marquette. I can't remember if it's farther west or farther south, but there are some things that haven't been taken care of in Drusar, and so it does. Now I guess previously where I felt like, oh man, there's still so many threads to tie up in Drusar. Now I'm kind of like, man, now it feels like there's getting a growing pull outside of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of a wrap up in Drusar in the near future, or maybe they go on their adventure and they return to it at a later date. I don't know, but I don't see us spending another 15 episodes there now.
Yeah, I don't either.
But who knows?
But yeah, I mean that's one of the interesting things about this as a storytelling medium, because there are lots of threads and not all of them get addressed. It depends on which way the party goes. So I think there's a lot in Dressar if they decided to stay there, but they didn't. So whatever, those threads will either still be there if that like makes sense, or they will have progressed just without the influence of the party, and we'll see the results of that. Or maybe we won't. Depends on if they go back, I guess. But um, yeah, there's definitely just things like, and not in a bad way, in a good way. There's things that won't get addressed from the party, but will still have an impact on the world.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm about to completely shift gears here. I just thought of something else, but if you had something
go for
else.
it. I'm actually like, I've kind of run out of things that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
So you lead it for sure.
Well, the one thing I wanted to talk about is Chetney and Ultgar, who we know Chetney has a relationship with Ultgar. I don't know if it was literally his like mentor or not, but he is also like a master craftsman, and we know that he worked at Not Forgotten, the shop that they just bought those toys from.
Okay, I totally missed that connection. So they're the same person.
Yeah, so the lady in the shop was like, yeah, we
said he like ran off or something, right?
Yeah, we used to have this guy that worked here. He was like a master craftsman. He made some of this stuff, and she name drops that name. And so then later, they're like, Chetney, you got to check this place out. There's this guy named Ultgar that is like you, and he's like, what?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm real interested in what's going on there. Like the fact that Ultgar himself just vanished one day, and that Chetney like wasn't excited to hear that name. He was like, "Oh shit," So
yeah. But we also know Chetney's transformation is pretty recent, so maybe there's even a connection there.
Yeah, like maybe we still don't know the truth of how and why he left his previous guild. I mean, presumably it was because he became a werewolf and had to take care of that shit. But he like originally said he got fired, didn't he?
Yeah.
But maybe maybe Ultgar was like his boss, and maybe Chetney just disappeared one day because of the werewolf thing. Or I mean, this is just pure postulation, but maybe Ultgar's looking for him. I just thought that was interesting, and I'm excited to learn more, especially because Chetney didn't go with them to the telescope after finding that out. But then he didn't do it. I think he just stayed and looked for that other rival party.
Yeah, he just kind of kept watch. But I did wonder about him not wanting to go look at the moon. Like, I wonder if
yeah,
because wasn't there a comment in a previous episode about like basically like, yeah, whenever the moon's at its highest or something to that effect, like watch out for this guy,
right? Yeah,
be aware.
What was that guy's name?
It was the
G.
Gurge.
That's right. Yeah, he was like, yeah, watch out for this guy. So we got all that moon stuff on top of the encyclopedia.
Yeah, the only one doesn't go, and so I wonder if that was actually like a more intentional. Like, it's probably best that I don't.
Fair point. So. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, see if you had any thoughts on it. I really don't know what to make of it, but I was surprised at the type of reaction he had. That it was like,
yeah,
it was not a pleasant surprise. It was like, oh no type of thing.
I missed it for sure, and I'm remembering it now in hindsight. Yeah. These are just great breadcrumbs for like bigger story leads, which I'm all about. What else from the episode do you want to, is there anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, I think that pretty much covers it for me.
Yeah. So we got the heist tonight. We'll see this earring, the wind folly. If this is it turns out to be a bigger item than we think, or if it's just a random artifact or what have you.
Certainly fascinating to if it's real, which I mean I'm assuming it is.
Yeah. So should be a good episode tonight for sure.
Yeah.
So, and sorry again, guys, for this episode getting out so late. Apologies for that. Totally my fault. But
we still made it.
Yeah, you can continue to follow us on our YouTube channel or on Twitter at the Pixelists. And it is Thursday. So
it is indeed.
Yeah.
Just thumbnail, I guess.
Yeah. We could do like a little telescope action or something.
Oh yeah, and I get you probably can't see it, but there's like a moon on our overlay. So I'm gonna
Oh,
be
yeah, I
like,
can't see it
I'm gonna
actually.
be like pointing to the moon. I guess you could maybe like,
Okay, yeah,
or
I'll do that.
maybe
Should I do this way?
face other way, other way.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, cool. All right. Well, that's everything. Thanks for checking us out, and we'll catch you next week too.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.